My name is Adesina. Can you all hear me? Shola, can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. My name is Adesina. I'm a local counsel with Nokia in Nigeria. Today, I'm privileged to be a member of the Employment and Labor Association of Nigeria, fondly referred to as ELN. And I would like to welcome you all to our webinar for the month of July, titled The MBA and the Welfare of Lawyers in Nigeria. Today we have scheduled 3 speakers who are joining us and I would like to firstly thank them for agreeing to join us today. However, before I hand over to our moderator for today's event, Shola, who will introduce our speakers, I would like to give a brief introduction into ELN, and especially for those who are joining the webinar for the first time today. ELN, 5 years ago, a handful of lawyers came together with an idea and formulated an idea to create the largest network of individuals and firms with the highest expertise and passion for employment and labor issues in Nigeria. ELN was subsequently incorporated with the CAC in 2019 as a non-governmental organization. ELN's mission is to become the preferred resource point for stakeholders seeking high level of expertise on employment and labor-related matters. ELN provides value. ELN provides value by educating, projecting, and creating a resource base for employment and labor-related matters to its stakeholders, which include human resource professionals, employers of labor, the workforce, employer and employee representative bodies, and governmental agencies in Nigeria. Today, ELN is made up of a team of experienced and specialist legal practitioners, academics, and human resource managers with special competencies in all aspects of employment and labor law, including industrial relations, immigration, pensions, tax, and executive compensation. We collaborate to provide pragmatic and relevant solutions through our advisory opinions, publications, trainings, webinars, and dispute resolution advocacy with the employment and labor law, within the employment and labor law relations space. What do we do? What does ELN do? At ELN, we follow new developments in labor and employment through our advisory opinions. We provide guidance for dealing with such developments based on specific requests and needs. For instance, ELN was at the front line of providing timely advice through these uncertainties caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and published an advisory opinion that addressed the most frequently asked questions regarding the impact of COVID on employment relations. ELN's public interest advocacy team provides pro bono advice and representation to indigent persons on related queries and disputes. In this regard, we currently have a partnership with the Lagos State Office of Public Defender, the National Industrial Court, ADR Center, and the Nigerian branch of the Standing Committee of Mediation Advocates, which is SCMA UK. ELN's webinars are widely known. Our webinars deliver high-value trainings on labor and employment law to a wide audience and are anchored by experts within and outside the association. For instance, today we have over 500 participants who have indicated interest to join this webinar. Some topics we have covered in the past include managing large-scale redundancies, data privacy concerns, labor issues on mergers and acquisitions, the pension multi-fund structure, tax implications of outsourcing arrangements, and conducting disciplinary proceedings. We also provide private trainings to executive management teams to both public and private organizations. Ellen operates through a structure of 3 functional committees: the Events Committee, the Public Interest Advocacy Committee, and the Publications Committee. The Events Committee is responsible for putting together monthly webinars, one of which is today's webinar. The Public Interest Advocacy Committee is responsible for managing all public interest interventions of the association, while the Publications Committee is responsible for the association's publications. I'll give an introduction into some of our key members. Jamiu Akolade is one of the visionaries of this association and is a trustee of the association. He's currently a legal counsel with the global litigation team of the Shell Petroleum Development Company, SPDC. Another key member of the association is Inenaize. She's also a founding member of the association and a trustee. She currently serves as legal advisor to FHN 26 Limited and is deputy legal manager to the OML 26 asset management team for MPDC FHN JV. The third member notable of mention is Falabi Kuti. He's a supervising partner with Purchstone and Grays, a renowned law firm in Lagos. He's responsible for the firm's employment labor and employment, mergers and acquisition, private equity and corporate advisory teams. And lastly, we have with us Ayodeji Arowolo. He is a lawyer with over 15 years post-qualification experience in various areas of legal practice, particularly contract, corporate and commercial law, labor and employment, and criminal law. He's currently the operations counsel at British American Tobacco. For more details about Ellen, please feel free to go to our website, ellen.com.ng. You can also interact with us on any of our social media handles, on Twitter as well as on Instagram. We will now be starting with today's event. I'll be handing you over to Shola, who would moderate this event. But before I do that, I would like to ask everyone to please turn their videos off and to let you know that everyone has been muted. This is to enable the session is being recorded, and this will enable the session proceed with minimum interference. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat box of on the page. And now I will hand you over to Shola. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adetutu. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good, great. So let me start by welcoming everyone to this session. I don't know if we have all our speakers here. Mr. Dele Additional SAN, please, are you here? I'd like you to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Yes, how are you, Shola?
I'm fine, sir. I don't see you.
You should be able to see me now. Okay, my video is dimming. Can you see me now?
No, I don't see you.
Okay, I can see myself.
Okay, okay, we'll work on that. Mr. Dr. Babatunde Ajibade, good to see you. Hello and welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I see you, Mr. Olumide Akpata. Please say hello to us.
Hi, Shola, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good. So I'm waiting to see Mr. Dele Additional SAN so that we can start. Okay, while we wait for that, let's set some ground rules. I'll start with some ground rules. Specifically, we want to draw your attention to Regulations 9.2 sub 3 of the guidelines which prohibit the use of offensive or derogatory language, or text message, social media comments meant to disparage the candidates from their supporters. And that's why we've taken measures to mute the audio and videos of all participants. We promised you an interactive session, so if you have questions, from the get-go, you can just put it in the chat section. I'll see it, and then I'll be able to put your questions across when it's time. Do we have Mr. Adesina now?
Hello, can you see me now?
No, I don't see you.
The video is already there. I can see myself on my own screen.
Okay.
I can see you. I can see SPA.
Okay.
I can also see myself. Oh.
Can our host confirm if? Okay, yes, I see you now.
Huh?
Okay. I see you now. Thank you. I see you now, Mr. Adesina. Thank you. Okay. So we started with a poll, which is going to be the launch for our conversation today. And the question that we put out there was, how satisfied are you with the way the NBA?
You're breaking.
Okay. Is it better now?
I can't hear. It's breaking.
Can you hear me now? So I was saying that we started with a poll. I was saying that we started with a poll, and the question that we put out was, how satisfied are you with the way the NBA handles lawyers' affairs?
It's breaking, I can't hear you.
Ellen, can you do something about the audio, please? Mr.
Yeah, we're looking into that. We're looking into that.
Okay. So I see that we have about 387 participants online. And yes. Are we good? And the numbers are climbing, 388 now. Ellen, is the audio good now?
If Mr. Adesina could just maybe log out and log in back.
Hello? Hello, Mr. Adesina, are you still with us? Hello, Mr. Adesina.
Hello, Shola.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Shola, this is Nena. So Mr. Adesina has been requested to please log out and re-log in. And we would like to plead with all participants except our speakers to please turn off their videos so that the moderator of the session will be able to view the speakers as they speak with us. Okay. So please, if you're not one of the 3 key speakers for today's webinar, please turn off your video. Thank you.
Shola, I'm with you.
Okay, but I don't see. Okay, great. I have Mr. Adesina. I see Mr. Adesina. I see Dr. Ajibade SAN. I see. Now I don't see Mr. Olumide Akpata. Okay, yes, I see. Are we good to go now?
I cannot see Olumide. I want to see him.
Let us look. I can see you.
How are you? Not seeing you.
Very well, let us look.
I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Dele Adesina SAN. Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Thank you, Mr. Olumide Akpata. And we have over 400 participants online. I thank everyone for joining in. So we started with a poll, which is going to set the conversation for today. And we put a poll out there, which we asked people to vote on. Can we mute all the audio, please? I'm getting interference. So the poll question was, how satisfied are you with the way the NBA handles lawyers' welfare? And the options were very satisfied, satisfied, and not satisfied at all. And surprisingly, well, I don't know, I find it surprising, 100% said not satisfied at all. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Dele Adesina, SAN. Are you surprised by the results of this poll? 100% voted not satisfied at all with the way the NBA handles lawyers' affairs, lawyers' welfare. Let's start with your comments on the results of this poll. Are you surprised? What do you make of it?
Thank you very much. I'm not surprised. The poll recorded 100% not satisfied. I'm not surprised. But we have so much to do in terms of welfare, essentially for the younger generation, but also even for senior members of the bar. If that poll was extended to even senior members of the bar, you will probably also get not satisfied at all. We have a lot to do. There's a lot to do. I'm not surprised about the result.
Thank you. Dr. Ajibade, please weigh in. I'd like to get your comments on the results of our poll.
My comments are the same. Thank you, Shola. My comments are the same as Mr. Adesina, Deacon Adesina's. I'm not surprised at the result of the poll. I don't think, even I'm not satisfied with the way the NBA deals with welfare. So I'm not surprised that everybody else isn't either.
Mr. Olumide Akpata, I'd like to start with your reactions too.
Yeah, thank you, Shola. Thank you, and thank you to Ellen for putting this together. Definitely not surprised, and this is really what it goes to the heart of the matter. The fact that the NBA is an association of people who have come together who have banded together for certain purposes and certain objectives. And so what we find is that as soon as those objectives are not achievable or are not being achieved, dissatisfaction will set in, And so this is my own experience. I have asked around, I have sought the views of many, young and old, and there's thorough dissatisfaction with the NBA and the way it handles the affairs of its members, particularly welfare. And so what you find is that most people are just members, they remain members of this association purely out of compulsion, If they had a choice, they would walk away. And that is the sad reality.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata. I'm going to give each of our speakers, because we want to make this as interactive as possible, I'm going to give each of our speakers 5 minutes each to talk to us about our theme for this session, NBA and the welfare of lawyers. I know you've made some comments, you've all made some comments about it, but how did we get to this stage where the NBA is not meeting the needs and the welfare of its members? And what can we do going forward? What are your thoughts generally about this issue? How did we get here? And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Adesina. Let's get you to talk for 5 minutes and give us your general comments about this state of affairs.
Thank you very much. You talk about welfare of lawyers. It is in two parts. There has to be a consideration of professional satisfaction on one part, and then welfare provision satisfaction on the other. A good number of the members today do not experience professional satisfaction. The opportunities are getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer by the day. And it should not be so. Rather than opportunities being expanded, it is narrowing down more and more by the day. So professional satisfaction is flying through the window. Now, satisfaction in terms of welfare, in terms of salary, in terms of opportunity creation by the leadership of the association, in terms of looking at the welfare packages of the members, also is not there. Number 3, I believe you asked the question, how did we get here? One of the reasons, as to how we got to this point is what I describe as lack of continuity by successive leadership of the association. If today I become the president of Nigerian Bar Association, I'm there for 2 years, I put in place 1 or 2 policies, and another person succeeds me after 2 years. In all probability, it will be thinking of what is going to do new. Only in few cases have we had continuity of program and policies, and I'll give you examples. The issue of welfare is not new. In 2000, when I was contesting, 2000, of the branches, I think it was Aba branch, he said, if I am not a member of the Bar Association, what do I lose? Because by being a member, I don't know what I'm gaining. And I told him that his question was right, but I will add value if by the grace of God I get there. I got there, and we put some things in place. For the very first time, we introduced what we called group life assurance policy for members of Nigerian Bar Association for accidental death or sudden death and for medical expenses without paying extra kobo. Once a lawyer paid his bar practicing fee, it's automatically covered. That was on. So many lawyers took advantage of it. The families of so many deceased lawyers took advantage. On not less than 2 instances, a lawyer dropped dead in active service while appearing in court in Ikeja here. That was on. Number 2, we put in place what we call mandatory continuing legal education. At a point, this also was not continued, and that gave room for individuals to begin to sponsor one training or the other. In some instances, with fee. The Bar Association must be responsible to its members. The members must see what they are gaining from the Bar Association. So, continuity of programs is key to arrest the drift in the welfare of lawyers. In terms of professional satisfaction, we have gotten to a point when there is so much encroachment in our practice. The practice base is getting shrinking and shrinking by the day. I'll give you another example. Before now, a lawyer could walk to any of the banks, get breaks, recover money for the banks. And we had that. There was a particular time I went to Marina, head office of UBA, and I got a brief to recover some amount. As I was walking out of the bank, Professor A.B. Kasumo was entering the lift into the same bank. I want to believe he got his own level of brief at that time. But today in this country, what do we find? The same banks that were farming out briefs to lawyers to recover money for them at that time, we rather now prefer to go to the EFCC or Special Fraud Unit of Nigerian Police, criminalize a civil transaction. Before you know what is happening, the investigative agencies are recovering money for these banks. For every money that is recovered along this line, for every brief that goes to the Special Fraud Unit, as against the lawyers, is a minus to the lawyer. And when monies are not coming in, how do they take care of the members of the profession? How will professional satisfaction come? Even junior lawyers in the chambers, how will they learn when the files are not coming in? People learn on the job, really. Practice is not a university where somebody is lecturing there and somebody is taking notes. No, you learn from the job that you do. So we have to refocus our attention into how to get our profession back. The profession is slipping out of our hands and we're actually doing nothing about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adesina. I will come back to you on some of the issues that you've raised. But I'm going to move over now to Dr. Ajibade. Dr. Ajibade, you have 5 minutes to talk about our team and give us your views on how we got here and what is responsible for this situation of things.
Thank you, Shola. The question of welfare for me is critical to the role of the Nigerian Bar Association and to the utility of the Nigerian Bar Association to its members. And it is clearly a fact that over the years, the Nigerian Bar Association has not succeeded in protecting the welfare of its members. There are a variety of reasons. Some of them have been mentioned by Deacon Adesina. But I think that we need to now take a structured approach to protecting the welfare of the Nigerian lawyer. And for me, it all goes down to the capacity of our profession to support its members. The greatest challenge I see now, at least especially for those lawyers who are in private practice, either as proprietors of firms or as employees in law firms or even in other organizations, is that the income generating capacity of the legal profession has been severely eroded. And some of the reasons for that are reasons that I think that we as lawyers have contributed to, and are reasons that I think that we as lawyers can address if we apply our minds to it and if we work together in a united fashion. For anybody who is in private practice, I think it's a common experience now that every time you want to charge for legal work, typically you'd have your client will tell you that, you know, there's somebody down the road who can do the same work for just a percentage of what you're asking for as your fees. And they probably go to that person down the road and bargain that person into the ground as well. So effectively, we're all doing more for less. And then added to that, the fact that we're churning out approximately 7,000 lawyers every year. If we don't do something about this, if we don't do something about holding the line when it comes to getting value for the work we do, I don't see how we're going to address the welfare of lawyers, at least to the extent that welfare equates to remuneration or income. So for me, one of the primary things that the NBA must do, and it's something that the law that sets up our profession anticipates that we would do anyway. The law anticipates that there would be a legal practitioners remuneration committee established under the Legal Practitioners Act, chaired by the Attorney General of the Federation and with the Attorneys General of the various other states as members, and with the NBA represented. I think that committee needs to get back to work. The last time it did anything was in 1991, when Prince Bolaji was the Attorney General of the Federation. I think that committee needs to get back to work. It needs to put scales of fees in place so that we're guaranteed that for the work we do, we'll earn a reasonable income. And this will benefit all lawyers, not just young lawyers or old lawyers or middle-aged lawyers. Then, of course, we need to address the enforcement of these scales of fees, because the one that we have has been observed more in the breach than anything else. I think that if we focused on that, it would have a significant impact on the welfare of the Nigerian lawyer. But then that's just the remuneration and income aspect of welfare. I think welfare goes beyond that. I think welfare has to do with satisfaction as well, and it has to do with the environment in the workplace. I think the Nigerian legal profession has to come of age. We have to get rid of some of our more archaic practices, because I think that the young lawyers who complain about welfare, at least those of them who are more discerning, I think the dissatisfaction is not just about money. It's about having a future. It's about working in a firm where you can see that there's a path to growth. It's about having the opportunity to move from one stage to the other in your career. I think we must move away from a system where, you know, lawyers come and lawyers go, and there's no attempt to retain them or no attempt to develop scale or to grow our practices. I think we must develop partnerships. I think we must encourage firms to retain their talent. And it's only by so doing that I think that we can start to compete with the law firms that we hear about or that we relate with in other parts, in more developed parts of the world. And I think that will also go a long way towards contributing to improved welfare for our lawyers. So these are just some of my thoughts on the theme. Hello, Shola, are you there? I think you're muted.
No, I'm not muted. Hello. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ajibade. So I'll come to Mr. Olumide Akpata. Mr. Akpata, I don't see you. Hello. Mr. Olumide Akpata, yes. Yes, please. Yes, I see you. Please go ahead. You have 5 minutes to talk to us about our theme for today.
Okay, thank you, Shola. For me personally, I like to cut to the chase. Your question is, how did we get to this point? And for me, I need to tell you 2 reasons why I think we are where we are at the moment. And for me, you see, if those 2 issues are not tackled, I mean, we can reel out what welfare ought to be, how we ought to deal with the issue. But if we don't deal with these 2 issues I'm about to mention, I don't think we'll ever get there. Because how did we get to this point? And then what should the association be doing, right? So I think, firstly, there's that basic disconnect. Because I have worked closely with the association. I have observed at very close quarters the way our MBA functions. And I must tell you that the issue of welfare is not on the agenda. That is the first problem. The way we have run as an association, we actually pay lip service to these issues. So I don't see that we have a deliberate strategy of dealing with the welfare issues of our members. For me, that is a major problem. There seems to be that deprioritization of the issue of welfare. And sometimes I see that we take welfare and reduce it to the mundane. And then we think of it in terms of freebies and handouts. As an organization, we are not tackling the issue of welfare strategically. That is the first problem, Shola. Then, Shola, the next issue is, even with the best of intentions, assuming without considering that we even had welfare as a front burner issue, even with the best of intentions, we are structurally not even set up to deliver on the issue of welfare. We are an association with 125 branches. Our members are all over the country. We have 3 sections. We have a plethora of forums and committees. We do not have in place the structure to deliver. And Adesina alluded to this point, but I would like to expand on it and say to you that we do not have a functioning and a secretariat that is functioning optimally to deal with issues like welfare. Welfare is multifaceted. To deliver on those objectives, the association must be running optimally. And that is not the case. At least that is not my experience. And I dare say that I have some experience with the MBA. The association is not positioned to deliver, Shola. That is how we got to where we are. So we can mouth the right, say the right things, bring up all the issues and lay them on the table, but we are not in a place to deliver on any of this. So, Shola, I hope you understand me. That I will preface my comments on welfare with these 2 issues. So anybody who is interested in tackling welfare will need to deal with these issues. Make it priority, number 1. Don't pay lip service to it. Every lawyer is deserving of a living wage. That is one. Every lawyer must be properly and well treated. That's number two. You know, there are many issues of welfare, but if it is not a priority to the organization, and if the organization is not set up in a way that it can deliver, it becomes impossible to deal with. Having said that, Shola, now, welfare, you can tackle it or you can address it from quite a number of perspectives. Some say it's not all about remuneration, but I say remuneration is key, it's critical. Even the holy books tell us that the laborer is deserving of his wages. So for me, I think that is a good starting point to determine whether or not we are interested in the well-being of those who are called lawyers. The basic interpretation or the basic definition, of the word welfare is just the happiness and the well-being and the good fortune of an individual or a group of people. So if we're not dealing with the issue of what that individual is paid, we have a problem. So definitely anybody who wants to tackle welfare must look at the issue of remuneration. What is a living wage in any jurisdiction? What should a lawyer be earning? Then, how can we as an organization, assuming that we have the structures in place, how can we enforce compliance? How can we encourage or persuade our members who are employers of lawyers or other organizations who are employers of lawyers to deal with those issues? There are many ways of doing this if we think through it. I have thought through it, and I think it's important that we deal with those issues. How do we enforce?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Akpata. Did you land?
Have I run out of 5 minutes?
Yes, I think so. I believe so.
Okay,
but we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay. We'll come back to you. I'm going to take off from where you stopped. And I hear all the candidates saying the same thing. We're not tackling issues of welfare head on. We're not making it priority, and which is what this session seeks to interrogate. Now, we all talked about wealth. We all talked about remuneration. The general belief out there is that Nigerian lawyers, especially the new wigs, are poorly paid. With lawyers, I'm told, receiving as little as 20,000 naira per month, and the national minimum wage is 30,000 naira. In 2018, the president of the NBA, Mr. A.B. Mahmood, SAN, inaugurated a 13-man committee to look into the issue of lawyers' welfare. One of the recommendations, I believe, from that committee was a minimum wage of 50,000 naira for young lawyers and 25,000 naira for core members. Unfortunately, nothing seems to have been done about that report. So what do we think can be done to reverse the situation and improve the general welfare of lawyers? We've talked about some of the issues, but Mr. Adesina, let me come to you.
Yep.
It was you who said that there were some things that were done in the past, but there's been a lack of continuity. So what can we do to improve the general welfare of lawyers? And then I also want to talk about when you notice the lack of continuity in some of the programs that you had put in place, why didn't leaders of the bar like you speak up against some of these things to stop the derailments that we've seen? If you could answer these questions in 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much.
Deacon Adesina, can you hear me?
Yeah, your questions are what? Your questions are what?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Come again.
I said that in 2018,
yes.
The president of the NBA, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Deacon Adesina, can you hear me? Good. In 2018, yes. The president of the NBA, A.B. Mahmood, SAN, set up a 13-man committee to look into the issue of lawyers' welfare. And one of the recommendations from that committee was a minimum wage of 50,000 naira for young lawyers and 25,000 naira for core members. I think it was you who also said that there were some plans that were put in place by past administrations which have not been followed through. There's been no continuity. And I'm asking, why didn't leaders of the bar like you ensure that there was continuity with some of those things that you had put in place? And what can be done to reverse the situation of this poor welfare, the general welfare of lawyers, and make it better?
Thank you very much. First, if you are not at the driver's seat, you are not there. You can only counsel, you can only give advice. And that advice, the only platform to give it is the platform of the National Executive Committee of Nigerian Bar Association. I remember one frontline leader of this profession once said that at the end of the day, advice is useless. You know, so it is the prerogative of the person who's at the driver's seat as the leader to decide whether he's taking that advice or not. I know, and I can say it with all firmness, that the National Executive Committee has talked over and over again about continuity of our programs. That once one executive leaves there, the other must continue whatever that is good his predecessor has done. But within the last couple of years, 6 years, 5 years or thereabout, rather than having, you know, an executive that will drive with everybody in the bus, some of the presidents have become a solo person running the association. And that is what is responsible for the disconnect that one of my brothers talked about. It is supposed to be a group work. And with very profound respect to my other brother, Olumide, there are structures for MBA to drive welfare program. Your second point is very valid, that there has been no prioritization. If we prioritize welfare, there are structures to drive it. I give you an example. In Nigerian Bar Association, we have the national welfare. And then we have branch welfare officers in all the 125 branches. Now, if a president who puts welfare at the top of his agenda says, this is my policy, this is what I want done, and then you command all the branch chairmen, along with their welfare officers, gentlemen, go to the branch and run this. Okay, and run this through. It will be done. It will be done. But you see, no problem is ever solved by technically avoiding the problem. The problem Nigerian Bar Association has had a couple of years to now is because we were avoiding our problems. And that is why I'm in this race. What was done before at that level can be done much, much better, with better perception, with benefit of experience, and with understanding of the present economic situation in the country. I believe that it can be done. Now, one of my brothers talked about the legal partner's remuneration for legal documentation. In 1989, Akpata started that program at the tail end of his tenure. He was president between 87 and 89. And this remuneration thing started. As young as I was at the bar, I was an active participant at one of the meetings in Benin. Now, it was concretized in 1981 during the regime of Charles Idehen. And the Attorney General signed it into law. That law is already archaic. But why is it that between 1991, no single president has alluded to that enactment? You see, right now, people undercut themselves. If you prepare a document and you charge 500,000 naira, the client will leave you, but within 2 houses to your own office, he has gotten a lawyer who is ready and willing to take 200,000. But if there is cohesion and a proactive president, such a thing can amount to a professional misconduct. And unless we begin to sanction ourselves, this profession will not move. One of the greatest assessments you can have in life is what we call self-assessment. You have to assess yourself. The time has come for us to assess our profession. The outgoing president did 2 things very recently, which nobody can fault in terms of proper attention to the welfare of members of the association. And that is the issue of the MBA Welfare Committee. How I wish that committee was set up. Dele got into government. I'm talking about the committee under Dr. Wale Babalakin, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. That committee, in fact, within 2 weeks after the setting up of that committee, I put a call through to Dr. Wale Babalakin and I said, this is not a stopgap affair. By the grace of God, when I become president of the NBA, you will come where you are on that committee. The second thing was introduced very recently, the law pavilion thing by that administration. You see, when you are fully, when you understand the problem, then finding solution will not be difficult. Thank God, coronavirus pandemic made us to know that there is much to be done, and we have to do it. Now, in terms of professional satisfaction, which for me is part of welfare, opportunity for growth must exist in a law firm. Like I always say, the principal or the partners of a law firm must be mentors to those that are working under them. You must be able to replicate yourself in the lives of the juniors in your chambers. They must learn on the job. If a junior leaves you, and that is all you know about him, then there's a problem. There must also, as part of welfare packages, a very pragmatic mentorship program. I've been talking about mentorship in this profession since 2010 at Kaduna conference. I still have a copy of the paper I presented in Kaduna. Presidents have had this, presidents have left. How many of them have implemented it? This is why, if some of these things have been done by one past president or the other, we will only be nurturing what they have done. This idea of individuals starting afresh will not be there. Another welfare issue. By the time we started this practice, a lawyer could go to the police station, stand in for a suspect, meet a police officer without any intimidation, and then secure the bail of an accused person or a suspect. But what do we find today? Some of these things have been taken over by the police authorities themselves. They arrange the bail of the suspects, and the lawyers are left in the cold. Where will the young lawyers?
I'm going to come in, Mr. Adesina. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but you're breaking a lot. I can hardly hear you. But I hope that our participants get the meat of what you're saying. But I'm going to cut in now. I see that we have over 500 people online. So let's move this. We'll come back to you and some of the specifics of some of the things you've talked about. Dr. Ajibade, I'm going to tell you to respond to the same question about the committee that was set up by the former IBA president, A.B. Mahmood, and the recommendations of that committee of a minimum wage of 50,000 naira for young lawyers, 25,000 naira for core members. Unfortunately, nothing was done about that report. You are also a leader of the bar. Why didn't senior lawyers like yourself weigh in to ensure that there were continuity of this project? And what can we do to improve the situation of welfare, the general welfare of lawyers? Hello, Dr. Ajibade, please go ahead. Did you hear me? Hello, Dr. Ajibade, can you hear me?
I think he's muted, Shola. I think he's muted.
Yes, I can hear you. I was the host had disabled my ability to unmute myself. It's been released.
Okay, well, sorry about that. Please go ahead.
No problem. So the question was why the policy put in place by A.B. Mahmood was not sustained.
Yes, and why senior lawyers like yourself didn't do something about it? Because we've heard things about continuity and what we can do differently to ensure that the general welfare of lawyers are improved.
Okay, so I'll tell you. I mean, my own take on that. My take on that is that that policy was not put in place in a manner in which it was all-encompassing. and why I would treat it differently. And the manner in which it is treated, I think, will go a long way towards its sustainability. My view, first and foremost, is that any policy in relation to remuneration that adopts a one-size-fits-all approach is not realistic, because if you don't take into consideration the both the geographical and the economic diversity of Nigeria, I don't think that you'll be putting in place a realistic policy. I think that this issue of welfare, both in terms of remuneration, and I keep emphasizing also in terms of income, because it's not all lawyers that are in employment. And if we only focus on those who are in employment and don't also pay attention to those who employ, we're only looking at one side of the coin. So we also need to take into consideration the fact that the earning capacity of the lawyers who employ others is not the same all over the country. So to fix a minimum wage in Lagos, minimum wage, whether we call it minimum wage or we call it recommended wage in Lagos, and apply the same recommended wage in Ilesha or Otukpo, I think is unrealistic. And for me, the starting point really to putting in place sustainable welfare policies is that the NBA must have a lot more information than we currently have in relation to the membership of the organization, the membership of the profession. We need to know who we are. We need to know how many we are in our various geographies. We need to understand the type of practices that we have. We need to have some idea of what capacity we have to generate income and to carry the number of lawyers that we're producing in the country at present. That for me is a priority issue. And I think that if that is done, it is not something that a subsequent NBA president can ignore. I mean, that is something that will be of lasting value. And that is something that I think that the next president, whether it is me or whether it is somebody else, must prioritize. We must know how many lawyers we have in this country. We must have some idea of the nature of their practices so that when we make recommendations in relation to remuneration, in relation to even training, in relation to career advancement programs, those recommendations will be tailored to fit the reality on ground. Right now, for me, anybody who a policy that says, oh, the minimum wage for lawyers is 50,000, and the minimum wage for the minimum stipend for youth corporates is 25,000. It might be good for some, depending on what part of the country they're in. It might not be good enough for others. And I think that that is something we need to take into consideration. So I agree that the NBA prior to now has not paid sufficient attention, with the greatest respect to previous NBA leadership who might have said that they were concerned about the welfare of the Nigerian lawyer. I don't think that the evidence on ground shows that sufficient attention and sufficient effort has been put into addressing the issue of welfare on a permanent basis. And I agree with Deacon Adesina. I mean, one of the first things that came to my mind when the current president set up the COVID welfare committee was that, I mean, would it not have been a lot better if this committee had been in place all the while? And for me, it has to be something that is done, again, on a sustainable basis. We can't do this when there is a crisis. I think the Welfare Committee is actually recognized in our constitution, both at national and at branch levels. These are standing committees, and I think those committees ought to be in place. Those committees ought to have a policy in place whereby they put money aside for a rainy day, so that when these things happen, we're not praying for another pandemic, but then that's the essence of having insurance, having a policy in place for when things go bad. When things go bad, we should have something in place to look after members of our profession. And contrary to what a lot of people say, it's not just the young lawyers. What about the old lawyers? What about the elderly lawyers who are no longer able to practice and who the profession many a times just forgets about? A lot of them are also suffering, and they're in a situation where they can no longer work, and yet they're not able to look after themselves. I think the profession also owes them support. So I think we need to take the issue of welfare a lot more seriously right across board, put policies in place, have a clearer idea of who we are, how many we are, and what kind of support we need, and then put structures in place that can provide that support. That's my view. And I think, like I said, I think one of the reasons why the previous policy was not sustained is because it was not dealt with in the manner that I've just described. I think if we put a welfare policy in place that goes through a much more detailed process, I think there's a much greater chance that that will be sustained and that it will stick.
Hello?
Hi, Shola.
Can you hear me?
I'm done.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Akpata, can I get you to weigh in on this issue? We have to move very fast now. Okay, what do you think can be done to reverse the situation and improve the general welfare of lawyers? I know you've made some comments about it in your first shot. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so just to reiterate the point, Shola, it is not priority to our leaders, or it has not been. And secondly, even if we wanted it to be, we have no structures in place. And I disagree with the learned senior advocate, the structures do not exist. I run an organization and I can tell, I run a big organization, I can tell when an organization is not set up to achieve its objectives. So, because if the MBA was set up to achieve its objectives with regard to welfare, the MBA would understand that beyond remuneration, as Dr. Ajibade has mentioned, there are other issues to deal with regard to welfare. They are not, those issues are not being tackled. Let me take, for example, when we talk about the earning capacity of lawyers. Do you know that the big accounting firms, want to wade into our space and provide legal services? Is the MBA vigilant enough to know that this incursion is about to occur? Is the MBA able to put structures in place to prevent that, or at least ensure that if that happens, it is upon terms that we agree on? Do we have anything in place to even talk about the way law firms treat their staff beyond remuneration, job satisfaction? In my firm, I have a partner today who walked into that firm as a youth copper. Is there a progression, a career path? Are we able to regulate our firms in such a way that we know that they are paying attention to the issues of our lawyers? You mentioned earlier about how poorly paid some of our lawyers are. It is true. It is extremely correct that is the problem. And then let me speak on one point. Capacity building is critical because it ties in with welfare. We are knowledge merchants. That's what we sell. And if we are able to gain or access knowledge, we cannot move forward. MBA cannot continue to pay lip service to continuing legal education. There must be what it needs to do to tweak the regulations and ensure that our lawyers are getting the necessary knowledge that they need. That is what is important. Because if they are not able to practice proficiently, there will be a vacuum, and that vacuum will be filled by others. So my point is that the MBA is not able to, anybody who wants to go and fix it has to deal with structural issues first, and that is what I'm proposing. So as far as I'm concerned, we must look at all of these issues, firstly, from a structural point of view, before we now even go to the granular. And welfare includes even dealing with issues like health. Health is important. The previous administration introduced the life insurance. I think which is a great thing, and it will be good to improve on that. But I think that we should also consider issues such as the health of our lawyers. We must look at all of those things. So, Shola, the point I am making is that we must be able to firstly prioritize these issues. Secondly, be in a position to deliver on all the stuff that we say we want to deliver. We can speak about them from today till the end of till the cows come home. It just will not work. So I think that one of the things that we must do is that we must, for example, remuneration. The Legal Practitioners Remuneration Committee that has been Legal Practitioners Remuneration Order that we have referred to here. Totally antiquated, totally out of date. we must look at that and say, okay, firstly, it even only deals with one aspect of legal work. Is it possible for us to tweak that to deal with more other aspects of legal work and protect our turf? Even the committee that was referred to is headed by the Attorney General. NBA has no control over the activities of that committee. That committee hardly ever meets. NBA would need to set up, if it's really interested in the issue, will need to set up its own remuneration committee. But like I said before, all of these things are put, I'm glad that the issue of Abiy Mahmoud, past President Abiy Mahmoud's recommendation really has not seen the light of day, because there's no wind to be, no wind beneath the wings. Nobody is able to make those things fly. So I think it's important that we do that and we deal with all of these issues and take them systematically and take them and deal with them in a way that we can deliver value to our members. It is a recognition of what our role as an association is that will inform whether or not we're dealing with those issues of welfare. And let me just conclude, Shola, if I have another minute, to say we cannot pay lip service to knowledge development and capacity building. That is what our sections were set up for. We must make sure that there's collaboration with the branches. We must put tools in the hands of our lawyers, so our members, so that they can earn a living, so that they can gain more skills, so that they can service this economy. If that is not done, we will not even have lawyers. We cannot even speak of welfare because they will not even have the skills to service, to operate in the world that we're living today. So that for me is critical. Just ensuring that we have the structure, that we prioritize, and then we take the points one after the other. What do we want to achieve? I've spoken about 2 or 3 now. I hope I get time to speak about a couple more as we proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata. You noticed that I allowed you to land this time. All right.
I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Let's move on. Dr. Ajibade, I'm going to start with you now. A lot of the candidates, almost all the candidates have talked about opportunities for lawyers. The average client does not seem to value the use of lawyers, except in very dire situations. So as a result, Nigerian lawyers often earn less than their counterparts in other jurisdictions. What solutions can you suggest to enable lawyers to earn reasonable fees for their work, particularly since the profession does not allow advertisement or ambulance chasing? Dr. Ajibade, please.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's an orientation problem, and it's something that I clearly would like to see addressed.
The report that was created for American viewers. So in the opening
there's somebody talking.
People who have never been to Finland,
there's somebody talking.
Experience,
can we mute everybody, please?
Shows us from establishment the love of coffee.
Can our host please mute everybody? I see a lot of hands up. Please, if you have questions or comments, please drop them in the chat session so that we can take them later. All right, Dr. Ajibade, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I was saying that I agree with you entirely that it's an orientation issue, and it's something that I think we need to take seriously and address from a variety of perspectives.
Can you hear me now, sir? Okay, all right, sir. So I also particularly love that there's a lot of background in the report.
There's somebody carrying on a conversation in the background.
Sorry about that. Can we...
Thank you. So I think the approach to this has to be from multiple perspectives. First of all, I think that young lawyers, new lawyers coming into the profession have to be guided as to the variety of opportunities that are available in our profession. The legal profession is not just about working in a law firm. I think that is important. I think that is the role that the NBA ought to play. There has to be some significant career guidance right at the inception so that we can channel new entrants into the profession, into the variety of options that are out there. But then when it comes into when you're in practice, or even for those in practice already, there's also a need for a change of orientation. Typically, the Nigerian lawyer sees his or her role as resolving problems after they have arisen. But there is a significant amount of work that lawyers ought to do in terms of dispute avoidance, not dispute resolution. And that is actually the work of a typical transactional lawyer at various levels, because of course you have transactional law at the high end, and you also have transactional law at the low end. I think what the NBA ought to be doing is making the utility and the importance of those services more apparent, even to the potential market out there. And we've got loads of SMEs. We've got loads of people doing, small and medium scale business who don't use lawyers at all, and who are signing up to all sorts of agreements that only blew up in their faces when there's a dispute. Now, if they had utilized the services of lawyers, and if we as the NBA made the utility of consulting a lawyer in order to avoid a dispute a lot more readily available, we would not only be making it better for these entrepreneurs, because we will be assisting them to avoid a lot of the problems they run into, we'll be increasing our own ability to generate work. So I think that is critical. And I agree with my friend Olumide Akpata. Of course, one of the greatest things that we must do in terms of welfare is to develop and increase the scope of capacity development. But then that also has to be targeted. And that's why I said, for me, the priority the MBA must have now is developing proper statistics, proper knowledge of its membership. Because there's really no point asking somebody in Ilesha to go for a course on maritime law. There are no ports in Ilesha, and the chances that you would come across the maritime law brief in Ilesha are very, very slim. I think that the MBA needs to be a bit more focused on and targeted in how it assists its members to add value, to improve their businesses, to improve their income generating capacities, and it has to be targeted. So, for example, we talk about the sections. I mean, it's a brilliant idea, the MBA setting up sections. We set this up. This was done to model the MBA along the same lines as the IBA. And it's a brilliant concept if properly applied. But it is something that also would require that we make sure we use horses for causes, so that we apply our resources to the places where they would have the greatest impact. And I'll tell you lastly that, one of the greatest benefits that I see that has come out of the current pandemic is that a program such as the one we're having now, which maybe 5 years ago, if you said you wanted to get this 500, we have 500 participants now, I see. If you wanted to get this 500 participants into knowledge sharing sessions such as this, you'd have to have 500 people traveling from all over the country to Lagos or to Port Harcourt, paying for transport, paying for accommodation. We now know that, this technology has been available for a long time, but then, they say necessity is the mother of invention. We now know that we can do these things a lot easier, much more effectively, and at much lesser cost. These are the things that I think that the NBA must grasp and take full advantage of going forward. So we must be able to use these resources to deliver value to our members.
Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Mr. Akpata. Hello, Mr. Akpata. The question is, hello, Mr. Akpata. What solutions can you suggest to enable lawyers to earn reasonable fees for their work, particularly since the profession does not permit advertisement or ambulance chasing?
Okay, Shola, thank you for that question. So the first thing is that you see where the problem lies. We still have outdated and actually, if you ask me frankly, very, very unreasonable provisions of our laws that prohibit us from advertising, right? So first and foremost, shouldn't we even be interrogating that issue? Why do we still have those kind of restrictions in our law books, as far as I'm concerned? Because for me, I frankly think that there's a problem. But again, we're not keeping our eyes on the ball, so we don't even do that. Okay, so we have these laws in place that prohibit us from advertising. And then don't we think that on the flip side, the NBA should at least help with enlightenment, let people understand why they need legal services? Because you alluded to the point that the clients don't really take lawyers as the services of lawyers as being important. It's a cultural issue. Nigerians don't think insurance is important. They don't think they really need the lawyer. And you know, you are just an appendage. And in fact, you are a nuisance that they simply tolerate. Now, so it is up to our organization to change that perception. And it's an orientation thing. Now, and the way to do that, firstly, is to identify the kind of services that this environment requires. We have to go back to the system of legal education. We have to go to the system of continuing legal education, because if you want to convince people that you're useful to them, you must have skills that you're bringing to the table. So which is why it's important that the MBA takes 2 steps back, look at the big picture. Because you can, if all the client sees you as is somebody who just drafts an agreement, he's going to think that, well, I will call on you when I will get to that point. And anyway, there are about 1,000 people who can draft this agreement. If, however, you are able to firstly ensure that lawyers are trained with certain skills that are almost indispensable, no client will need to be told that they will need to get the services of a lawyer. But 80% of our lawyers, as far as the client is concerned, I really don't need you. But if I do need you, it's probably when we get to court. And when we get to court, I can get anybody to fix my issues, right? So what do we do as an organization? We need to understand that this is a threat to us. Firstly, we need to train ourselves properly. We need to continue to upskill. And then also, we have to go about it in a systemic manner, in the sense that we will have to reorient the public. The tone from the top of our association must be clear, must be very clear. Reorient the public and let them understand the value that we bring to the table. Other professions are doing it. Other professions, the surveyors have secured for themselves a pride of place. They've secured for themselves an indispensable position. The surveyors have done that. Why can't we do that? The accountants have done that. Why can't we do that? But both organizations did that from the level of their from a systemic point of view. They approached it as a body. They came to the table. What one accountant or one surveyor could not achieve, the body corporate, the collective came to achieve that. That is the point we're making, because we can shout from now, the ordinary one-man lawyer is faced with this prejudice. The one lawyer is with this prejudice, and there's not much he can do. That is why he belongs to an association called the NBA. So we must tackle it from those 3 perspectives: how we train our lawyers, how we portray the profession, and then also how we as a group deal with the society in which we operate. So I think it's important how we train our lawyers as law students and how we train them as lawyers, continuing legal education. So, Shola, it will continue to be a sorry tale until we look at it from a systemic point of view. It will continue to be like this.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata. Deacon Adesina, please. Hello, Deacon Adesina, can you hear me? The question is, what solutions can you suggest to enable lawyers to earn reasonable fees, especially since the profession does not encourage advertisement or ambulance chasing?
Thank you.
You have to unmute yourself. Good.
Yes, do that now. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. First and foremost, let me start by saying that this is not an orientation issue at all. I will say it is an issue of abandonment of responsibility of leadership. Leadership is to solve problems. Leadership is to create opportunities. And I will give an example. Now, in 2002, my big brother, Olumide Akpata, I didn't know much of him. That administration of 2002 to 2004 put in place an established section on business law and section on legal practice. The overriding objective for creating that section was to create opportunities for our members. And it actually provided that opportunity. You have people diving into areas of communication law, maritime, aviation, to make money. Today, my brother, in fact, my two brothers there, they refuse to take me along. They have made very good impact in commercial practice. The two of them are products of the opportunity that we created between 2002 and 2004, which we are very, very proud of and we are very happy about. And this has to continue. Unfortunately, without any intention to disparage or reduce the recognition of past leaders, we have not had this kind of creative ability of expanding the base of our profession. That is number one. Number two, in any society where rule of law takes a back seat, the lawyers suffer for it. Rule of law gives the society the pride of place. It gives the society trust and confidence in their legal system. The higher the trust and confidence that society have in the legal system, the better for the lawyer. As of today in this country, because of complicated reasons, such as delay in our courts, issue in our courts, perception about corruption and what have you, and so on and so forth. People are not even interested anymore in briefing the lawyer to say, this is my problem, take it to court. And people are now more interested in solving their problems, going to the police. I mentioned this earlier. Even the banks, they do this. Individuals go to the police station to say, so person is owing me, it's not paying me. They believe in coercive powers of the investigative agencies today than consulting a lawyer. Like I said earlier, you want to put money in the hands of the lawyers of this country, retrieve our jobs, and stop encroaching of our services. That is very, very pivotal. Where rule of law is not in place, nobody values law. Today, how much of value is the society putting on us? I hope you are following me. Shola, you are hearing me? Shola, are you hearing me?
Yes, we can all hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this is one issue. I've mentioned 2 points now. Leaders must create opportunities. Opportunities will produce jobs, and jobs will give money to lawyers. Let me expatiate on this.
Briefly, please. Briefly, please. Please go ahead.
That many of our colleagues who have acquired knowledge have not been able to translate their knowledge into economic benefit. You want to start an office, you have to do that. What stops an association like ours to put in place, or from putting in place, a professional practice support trust fund? Put it somewhere there, and then 4 lawyers of about the same age group, 5 years, 6 years at the bar, will go to the association, access that fund, start a law office, and then begin to grow. The Bible says, do not despise the days of little beginnings. An office that starts like that, you never can tell where it will be in 5 years, in 10 years. But if that opportunity to take off is not there, then the people are still grounded on the floor. Leaders must create opportunities. I've also talked about the rule of law. The association is a catalyst that must push the rule of law in this country. We must push for obedience of court orders. when people are sure, there's a case I'm handling today. Award was given in 2006. 2006 and now is 14 years. We are still entering. It is not good enough.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Additional.
It is. Let me just conclude on this note. That if the system is not working, if the system is not satisfactory, if the system is not obeyed by way of people obeying rule of law, then lawyers will suffer for it. Nobody will bother. Today, people prefer to draw agreement in this country, and when there is any breach of that agreement, they go either to France or to UK for arbitration. Why are they not coming to Nigeria for arbitration?
Thank you, Mr. Adesina. I think that's a good place to leave it. Mr. Akpata, I'm coming to you with my next question. Law practice is very high intensity. It's a very high intensity profession. Lawyers are known to work long hours to achieve their client's objective. However, some workplaces seem to have taken this to extreme terms, in extreme measures in terms of grueling and unhealthy working hours. What role do you think that the NBA can play to address this issue and ensure that lawyers have a work-life balance? Talking about the long hours that lawyers work, how can the NBA ensure that lawyers, what role can the NBA play in ensuring that lawyers have a work-life balance?
Well,
2 minutes, please.
Well, I think it's important that the NBA plays more of a regulatory role in this regard, and where the laws that set it up or its enabling laws.
So what do we do now? What is your suggestion?
Where the
laws let's mute everybody.
Come now, come.
Ellen, please, can we mute everybody so we can hear the candidates speak?
Shola, that guy has taken 1 minute.
Please go ahead now. Everyone is on mute. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Akpata. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so when the laws that set us up do not allow for it, we should be able to seek amendments so that we can play a proper regulatory role, so that we can pay more attention to the practices of our law firms and employers of lawyers. So, for example, right now, to the best of my knowledge, all the NBA has to do is to know where each law firm is situated. If you change your address, make sure you let the NBA know. The NBA needs to play a greater role in finding out whether or not our law firm operates best standards and global best standards. From the point of view of remuneration, which we have talked about, working conditions, right, work-life balance, which is critical, and then even just ensuring that the lawyers are getting what they need to get as employees. Are you remitting their taxes? Are you remitting their pensions? Are you taking care of their pension liabilities? Because even lawyers don't even have contracts. Many lawyers are working, they have no contracts of employment. So it is important that the NBA recognizes that it has a responsibility in this regard, and to ensure that it delves into that space, it follows up on what is going on in terms of the practices, the HR, human resource practices of our law firm. Because I do hear that in many law firms, we have issues in terms of work-life balance. Yes, not only that, Shola, I can't hear. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
I think I.
Jesus Christ. So in offices, in many law firms, there's no closing hour. In many law firms, there's bullying. In many law firms, there's sexual harassment. In many law firms, there are no considerations for the female employees. The fact that they have other God-given responsibilities. all of these things, the NBA would need to step in and understand that it has a role in this regard. I recognize that there may need to be some tweaking with regard to our laws, but if we are really intent on improving the welfare of our members, we will pull all stops. We will do what we need to do to intervene in that space, because indeed working conditions in many firms are totally unacceptable. And
how does the NBA intervene in that state? How does the NBA intervene in that state?
That's the point I just made to you. The NBA would need to regulate law firms. For example, we have lawyers who come to the association. You want to be, you know that we interview those who want to apply for silk. Make it one of the conditions that when you are applying for silk, we will need to know what your practices are. What do you pay your employees? Do you abide by standard tenets, workplace tenets, in terms of employment, in terms of how you conduct your affairs as a law firm, as an organization? And then I said to you just now that the NBA would need, if it needs to get legal backing, it will need to push for amendments of its enabling law so that it can properly regulate the space. Because right now, everybody is doing what they like. And then it gives our profession a bad name. There's nobody enforcing what the law firms, the NBA will have to take steps. Either you use what the law allows you to do now, which is to regulate, sanction, right? Sanction those who are erring. Give them, lay down the policies, the regulations. How should you conduct? For example, I just mentioned to you, Shola, every lawyer should have a standard working contract. That should be a basic minimum. Anywhere they are employed, whether it is law firm or whether it is in-house, they must have a standard working contract. It cannot be based on the whims and the caprices of whoever the employer is. That is where the problem stems from. Because if working contract tells you what your working hours are, then there's a basis to contend that I ought not to be in the office at this time, or we should be talking overtime.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata. Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Dr. Ajibade, can I get you to weigh in on this issue too? How does the NBA, what role does the NBA play in ensuring that lawyers have a work-life balance?
I think the NBA has a significant role to play. As has been said, I think that the NBA ought to put rules and regulations in place, guiding law firms as to the minimum conditions that they should provide for lawyers that work with them. But I think we need to be realistic as well, though. You know, there's a cultural issue here. You know, there's some law firms, and I speak from experience and also from what one hears anecdotally, where even though associates or junior lawyers in the firm have finished their work for the day, but they dare not leave the office for as long as, you know, the principal is around. So even if the principal is around till 11 p.m., everybody is there till 11 p.m. because, you know, it's an offense to leave before Oga leaves. I think that kind of mentality, that kind of orientation is what militates against, you know, young lawyers feeling that they're recognized as being a significant part of the profession, and it's just ill treatment. Now, as far as I'm concerned, why I say we need to be realistic, the nature of legal practice, it's not a walk in the park. So if you're a litigator and there's urgent work, there are papers that need to be filed tomorrow morning, because, you know, your client's interest, the only way to protect your client's interest is to work till late. I would consider it ridiculous that any lawyer worth his salt would say, look, my letter of employment says that I should close at 5. And therefore, you know, I don't really care what the client's interest requires. I'm leaving at 5. So I think that we need to balance this. Clearly, you know, we shouldn't exploit lawyers who are in employment. And I keep saying, not just young lawyers, any lawyers who are in employment. But lawyers must realize that our primary objective, the primary objective of every lawyer should be providing satisfaction to the client. And if what is required to provide satisfaction to the client is that you work beyond regular hours, then so be it. But definitely, we must have standardized terms and conditions of employment for lawyers. As I say, we lawyers, and this is Employment and Labor Lawyers Association that have put this together. We lawyers advise our clients, and we advise employees also on what their rights and obligations are under the law. I think it's a travesty that despite the fact that we give this advice, you find that a lot of lawyers who are employers or other lawyers themselves don't comply with a lot of these regulations. That definitely must be dealt with. I agree that it's something that should be dealt with in our regulations. We should have standardized recommendations, and non-compliance should be a disciplinary issue.
Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Mr. Adesina, you'd have to unmute yourself. Mr. Adesina, please. You'd have to unmute yourself. Okay. Can you hear me, sir? Yes.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me too?
Yes, I can. So the question is, what role do you think the NBA can play to address this and ensure that lawyers have a work-life balance, to avoid issues of lawyers working on healthy hours at work and so they have a work-life balance? What role can the NBA play with that?
I think I should start from the point of view that the relationship here is founded on contracts. Employment is a contractual issue between the employee and the employer. And of course, there will be negotiations before the contract of employment is signed. I do not anticipate a situation where a lawyer, either he wants employment in a private law chambers or in a company, will not insist on having a letter of employment, which is the basis of that contract before he starts job. I do not anticipate that situation to be. So we must proceed from the normal, and that is that there was a negotiation between the employee and the employer. They come to an agreement, a letter of employment is issued, and then what goes on. Just like my brother said, Dr. Tunde Ajibade, it depends on the aspect of the job that you do. As a litigation practitioner, legal practitioner, it may be difficult for you to close at 3 p.m. or at 4 p.m. As a commercial law office, your closing time may be 3 o'clock. But a lawyer must work under a conducive atmosphere. And what are the things to be taken into consideration? The facilities must be available, the working conditions must be humane, and so many other factors. I remember that when there is an inspection, before you get the silk, they will come to your office, and the gentleman that inspected my office at that time, the first place he went to was the restroom. So you don't expect somebody to put in the best if the working condition is not humane, it's not conducive, it's not satisfactory. When working conditions supports productivity, you will see the worker putting in his best. So it's really neither here nor there. I'm a very practical person, and I'm a realist. I do not see how the Nigerian Bar Association can legislate that all offices must close at 12. I do not see the workability of that. There are instances where brief will come into your office at the threshold of closing period. Will you tell the client to come the following day? If it is only to listen to the client, to get the facts, you will do that. And you may ask 1 or 2 or 3 juniors to meet you. I've had calls to call juniors on Saturdays to say, can we meet at 11 o'clock? Because there is something urgent to be done. And when that is done, if a junior leaves his house on that kind of invitation, and he comes to join you in the office with happiness, and you yourself will know whether somebody is happy or is unhappy. That is the truth. So what I'm saying in summary is that legal work is very demanding. It's very, very demanding. In fact, somebody says that legal work or legal practice is as demanding, is a very jealous profession. It possesses you completely, leaving you with little or no social life at all. So, the best MBA can do is to ensure that employers of lawyers provide conducive atmosphere that will enable the juniors to grow, is to ensure that there are what we call prospects, growth prospects for the junior while he's in chambers. So that if he spends 4, 5, 3, 6, 8 years in your office, 10 years, and he decides to go and set up his own, he must have been equipped. The skill must have been learned by him for him to do the work.
Thank you, Mr. Adesina.
Don't also forget, like the example I gave earlier, if you are the kind that we say, gentlemen, we will spend extra hour today, or please, you have to be here tomorrow, Saturday, to clear this job. And after you finish the job, you just say, thank you very much, bye-bye. Next time you call them, they will not show up.
Thank you, Mr. Adesina.
You have to give back to whatever they are giving the cleaners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our time is fast spent, but I want to take some of the questions that have come up on our chat group. It's important because this is supposed to be an interactive session. So there's this question. Is there a role for the law faculties and Nigerian law school in preparing prospective legal practitioners for future proactive roles in sustaining and continuously improving the welfare of lawyers? What is your view on this, including welfare of lawyers in the university faculty and Nigerian law school? These questions are from Professor Momodu, Kasim Momodu. Can I get Dr. Ajibade to go first?
Sorry, Shola, can you repeat the question?
Okay. Is there a role for the law faculties and the Nigerian law school in preparing prospective legal practitioners for future proactive roles in sustaining and continuously improving the welfare of lawyers? What is your view on this, including the welfare of lawyers in the university faculties and the Nigerian law school?
Okay, so I'll start. I think that's a very good question from Prof. And I'll start from the rear. I mean, definitely, I think that our profession and the Nigerian Bar Association must be all-inclusive. And the end part of Professor Momodu's question highlights the fact that the academic part of our profession don't feel that they are sufficiently, that their interests are sufficiently taken into consideration by the NBA. I think that, it's not just them. I think there's been an undue focus in the NBA on the private legal practitioner, and that we must expand scope and take into consideration the interest of all legal practitioners, be they in academia, be they law officers, be they corporate counsel, be they in-house counsel, etc. But with regard to the role that lawyers in equity, as we like to call them, lawyers in the university law faculties or in the law school play in ensuring the welfare of the legal professional, I honestly don't know that it's fair to place any onus on them. I think the onus is more on us, those who are already qualified, to provide guidance. And I said this to somebody recently that, when we talk about young lawyers, and the criteria for selecting young lawyers is 7 years post-call or less. I think that there's too much variety between year 2 and year 7 even to put all those lawyers in one box, because there are lawyers who are 4 or 5 years post-call who are already running their own law practices and are successful in their own right. And there are lawyers who are 10, 15 years post-call who are still in employment. So to bunch everybody into year 1 to 7 as young lawyers, I think is missing the point. But there's a particular category that I think that the NBA must focus on in relation to this question, and that is the lawyers that are just coming out of law school. Excuse me. I think that the NBA must focus on this cadre of lawyers and provide them with proper guidance, proper career guidance. And it is at that stage that I think that you can assist these lawyers onto a path that would lead them to sustainable welfare. Because, you know, we're not all cut out to practice the same kind of law. But if we're not given guidance, if we're not assisted at that early stage, we might end up, you know, being a square peg in a round hole. If you're cut out to be a litigator, and then you end up, you know, being employed in a commercial transactional law firm, you're not going to be able to give your best because you're not doing what you're best at. Or if you're a human rights activist, if you were a human rights activist right from your school days, and you end up in a commercial firm, you're really not going to fit in properly because you're not doing what you're good at. So I think that the NBA must play a more active role, provide proper career guidance for young lawyers as they're coming out of law school, guiding them along the various paths that are available in the profession.
Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Mr. Akpata, you'd have to unmute yourself first so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, indeed, that is a great question from the professor. But I think my understanding, I understand the question differently from Dr. Ajibade. I think what I hear Professor asking is what role the law faculties and the law school can play in preparing future lawyers to deal better with the issue of welfare. That's my understanding. And I think it's so critical that we deal with this point because there's a direct correlation between the kind of skills that a lawyer has and his welfare. Because if the lawyer is taught the right skills for whatever jurisdiction he's operating within, his welfare is almost assured because he will be able to, or he or she will be able to operate efficiently, profitably, and sustainably in the profession. So I think it's important that we need to engage with our colleagues in the academia and to tell them that the role that they have to play is that they need to lead the charge in demanding, and we need to work with them, the MBA needs to work with them, in demanding an overhaul of our curricula at the universities and at the law school so that we are churning out lawyers who are able to compete in the world that we live in today. That way, we would have dealt decisively with the issue of welfare. That way, at least a huge chunk of the welfare issues would have been dealt with. You know, and if we can do that, complete overhaul, so that they can have skills in contemporary subjects that are relevant to them, so that they can diversify, so that they understand that when they come out into practice, they can go in whichever direction that they are inclined towards. And that way they will be, you know, they say there are too many lawyers in Nigeria. It's not correct. There are too many lawyers doing the same things. That's the problem. So definitely I agree with, but I think in answering Dr. Mamadou, there's so much that we need to do at that level. And beyond, when they are trained and they come out, then we also, as the MBA, would need to focus on continuing education, because this is what is going to put food on the table of lawyers. What skills they have, what knowledge they have. How Shola, the lawyers, for example, see what COVID has shown us. Technology must be part of the curriculum. A lawyer practicing in Nigeria should not go through our universities and the law school without even knowing something about technology. So this is very important.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oluwapasa. Deacon Adesina, please. You'll have to unmute yourself so we can hear you. Okay, so we're trying to finish for 6, so let's...
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Shola?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
I said, let me join Olumide by thanking the professor who has this problem, because it is very key. If the foundation be destroyed, there is nothing the righteous can do. the university education, the Nigerian law school play a very prominent role in who you eventually be in future as a legal practitioner. I am aware that the American Bar
Association don't even know how to survive. The children are minding their own business at 18.
There is interjection, please. Yes, I was saying that the Nigerian Bar Association must intervene very decisively in legal education in Nigeria. We must work in collaboration with the law teachers to ensure a complete overhaul if we must produce a future proactive lawyers. If the students that are coming out of the universities must be issued, not only to the profession, but please, there are interruptions from within. Now, this is very important. So the NBA must do what I call the rapid assessment of our present legal education. Once that is done, they go further to put together a legal education summit where they can look at the curriculum of these universities. The very first time NBA has intervention in the affairs of legal education in this country, again, was 2002 to 2004, when we carried out some form of investigation, but at that time it was limited to finding out the reasons for falling standard that we were having. And we found out that the law school was not even properly funded. The NBA had to give out some symbolic amount of money to individuals. I mean, to the law school. Now, the lecturers have a role to play. Just like it has been said, if you are trained to do office work and tomorrow you want to practice, there is really no correlation. And that is why we need to shift from the present thing we are doing with the cooperation and collaboration of the law teachers to what I call clinical education, that we put in mind what is obtainable outside in formulating the curriculum of the universities. Now, in terms of welfare within and even outside, we have to do more. I happen to know that the body of senior advocate, which is an integral part of the Nigerian Bar Association, has put in place a kind of scholarship for the students in the universities. And by the time this exercise was going on, as the chairman of that subcommittee, I discussed with some lecturers in the universities. And surprisingly, some lecturers told me that they are aware that there is a disconnect between their course content and what is actually obtainable in legal practice. Then I asked the question, what are you doing about it? American Bar Association has no power of accreditation over universities, just like we don't have. But get involved in the affairs of the university. So the time has come when we, after all, law teachers are members of the Nigerian Bar Association too, there has to be a synergy, there has to be a strategic collaboration with law teachers to find out what can be done in order to close the gap between education and the practice.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Adesina. Thank you. So there's a question here, I don't quite know who it's from, but will you support a bill that prevents a lawyer from employing a junior if he cannot pay at least 50,000 naira? Let me start with you, Mr. Akpata. Will you support a bill that prevents a lawyer from employing a junior if he cannot pay at least 50,000 naira? Quickly, please.
Well, short answer, yes. If we can pass that through legislation, that will be, for me, it will be something that I would support with the caveat that it would depend on location. So if that bill is saying pay 50,000 naira to a lawyer who lives in Lagos, where 50,000 should be the living wage, that I will support. But if that bill says pay 50,000 in a jurisdiction where I know that even the principal may not be earning 50,000, I can't support that. So you see, it must be nuanced. So that is the problem with the issue of remuneration. It must be nuanced. We must look at it from the point of view of what are the realities in every jurisdiction. That is what is important. And I think we must do that and do it as well as we can. So that is my short answer to that. But
thank you.
If you would let me.
We're almost out of time. Okay,
if
please
you
quickly.
Me, Shola, one last
quickly.
point I wanted to make.
Go ahead.
You don't come round to me again.
We will come back to you for your closing comments, but quickly, go ahead.
Quickly is that we must also, this issue is also an issue of personal example. We must also encourage our colleagues to lead by example. You cannot legislate on all of these issues. Personal example. I, for one, have practiced law with the belief that all those who practice law must be well remunerated, must be well trained, must be given opportunities to earn, to get the knowledge and skills that they require. They must operate in an environment that is conducive. That has been the culture I have imbibed and I have continued to exhibit. So all of us who make all the right noises must show the way by example. And if we lead by example, then we can call out others who don't.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Ajibade?
Yes, Shola. Will I support a bill that imposes
50,000 naira as the minimum? Yes.
Across the board minimum? No, I wouldn't. Not because I think there's anything wrong with 50,000 naira, but as I said in my initial statement, I think that we need to drill down a bit more on this issue. I don't think just calling a figure without a rational basis, and I don't know what the basis is for 50,000. So 50,000 may be inadequate. It may be more than adequate. It may be dependent on geography. I think we need to be a bit more scientific so that we can deal with this issue once and for all. And maybe that we'll deal with it and we'll even have to attach it, fix it to the rate of inflation. 50,000 may be adequate today and not be adequate in a year or two down the line. But I think we need to be a bit more scientific. We need to have information and to deal with this thing like the learned people that we are. I don't think we should knee-jerk this. And I think that we've been tossing this issue about remuneration back and forth for too many years to deal with it, even now at this stage, just on a whim. I think we need to take a lasting approach to the issue of remuneration in the legal profession. So I wouldn't support a bill that just throws out a figure without understanding the basis for it.
Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Deacon Adesina, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, this question is very straightforward. I will support such a bill if it says if it states the baseline. In other words, make a minimum payment, but with relevance to location. With relevance to location, because location has a very vital role to play in access to work, and access to work is also a forerunner of the income that you earn. If somebody is practicing in Lagos, or you are practicing in Abuja, or you are practicing in Port Harcourt, yes, that is visible. But if somebody is practicing in some other locations beyond this, it may be a little difficult. So there must be reference to the location. And that was exactly what happened some years ago, again, when we were there. At that time, yes, at that time we categorized the country into about 3 zones. And we can, you see, impossibility is the language of mediocres. Nothing is impossible. We must try to do something new and see how it works.
Yes. I want you to also quickly, because we're rounding up now, I want you to also quickly respond to this question from the older members of the bar. Senior members of the bar who are old and vulnerable have complained of neglect, having helped to build the profession in Nigeria. In particular, Chief Shola, first female senior advocate of Nigeria, raised this issue at the last MBA conference, where most of the senior lawyers were put through serious rigor in registering and attending MBA conferences with little or no plan made to cater for them. What can be done to capture this category of people in creating better experiences for the senior citizens at the bar?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we must recognize our senior citizens, particularly those who have contributed to the growth of the profession, particularly those who have labored for the advancement of the profession. They need to be catered for. For example, you gave that of registration for conferences. Nothing stops us from creating a specific area for them for registration. And that registration is not for them to be paying 200,000 or to be paying 500,000 or 50,000. If they have assisted the profession to grow when the energy and the vibrancy was there, why can't they register for free to attend their annual conferences? That's number one. Number two, you see, again, this is a function of disconnect between the leadership of association and the former leaders of the association. In 2002 and 2000, I will always refer to what I have done before because experience is the best teacher. There was a time we went round to see the former officers of the association. And surprisingly, a past president of the association was suffering from Parkinson. He was no longer in a position to make income. Again, a former general secretary of the association had stroke. He was already immobile. With this was taken to the National Executive Committee of the NBA, and as at that time,
Super Coronas
to the leaders. And the way they appreciated the money was unimaginable. So we have people who have served us. I know a past president that is now over 85. A person like the very first lady, senior advocate of Nigeria that you mentioned, has contributed in elevating the standard and values of this profession beyond imaginable level. So nothing stops people like that to be recognized on their own right, or to even be conferred with some form of honor or the other.
Thank you, Deacon
Adesina.
We'll come back to you for your closing statement, but let me just go around. Let me get Dr. Ajibade to weigh in on this issue of the senior lawyers, the older lawyers, the senior lawyers, yes. The senior members of the bar, yes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Shola. Definitely, and I think I made allusion to this already when I spoke about welfare, that I think that welfare should not be seen as a young lawyer issue alone, and that there's another category, particularly this category that you've mentioned, that also needs to have their welfare concerns taken care of. And not necessarily welfare concerns in the context of financial assistance, because I'd like to believe that a significant number of our senior lawyers are actually well-to-do. They're not in want. But I think it's more in terms of recognition. I think we must recognize the contributions they've made to the profession over the years, and I don't think there's enough of that that is being done. So I see them as a special interest group that the NBA must cater for going forward, whether it is by way of awards, whether it is by way of special registration desks at our events, whether it's by way of special invitations to NBA functions, and whether it's by way of consultation. They say the young might have a lot of clothes, but they never can have as many rags as the elderly. So we need to consult with them from time to time, so that we can mine from their experience and learn what there is to learn from them for as long as they're still with us. So
thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Thank you. Mr. Akpata, please.
Shola, can I quickly correct an impression? As you will recall, I was co-chair of the planning of the 2019 conference. And I find it hard to believe that Mama Sholanke would have mentioned that, that they had problems navigating that conference, because we took particular care to make sure that we not only took care of registrations for our elderly, we also assigned each of them with escorts, took them around the conference venue, who guided them to the areas. And that is so critical that we pay attention to our elderly. It is so critical, and it was cardinal for us at the 2019 conference that we would do that. Mama Folake Sholanke herself, the senior advocate, and other elderly members of the profession. Again, I think it's a problem it's a problem of the structure or lack of structure of our organization. The fact that we have no institutional memory. 2014 to 2016, this association was recognizing our elders, past presidents, past general secretaries, inviting them to our events and so on, and honoring them. And there's just a lack of continuity, and because it is not something that we have sat down as a matter of deliberate policy to enshrine in our constitution or in whatever document that we need to underpin efforts like this.
We apologize for all those interruptions.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, can we get you to quickly round up? I think our time is run out.
So, in fairness to some branches, MBA Lagos branch conducts an elders night now and again. MBA Warri had actually put it in their own rules that elders of those of 70 and over do not have to pay branch dues, but they had to revert to status quo when the bylaws were introduced in 2014. Many branches are calling for that to be altered so that we can make concessions for the elderly. And Shola, while speaking of the elderly, we must not forget the disabled and the physically challenged amongst us. There is a problem with the system that does not even recognize that this group of people exists. The MBA cannot be in that category. We must pay attention to the elderly, to the physically challenged, and those vulnerable ones amongst us. Very important.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata. I'm going to start with final comments now. Deacon Adesina. I want to get your closing comments on this issue. And please walk into your response, a question we got about what the future holds for the legal profession in terms of making Nigerian lawyers more competitive globally. Give us your closing comments and please try to answer that as you wrap up. You have to unmute yourself, please. Can we unmute Deacon Adesina, please? Can we unmute Deacon Adesina, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, there was a question you asked. Can you please repeat?
Yes, I said I would like to take your closing comments, but please walk into your response. What do you think the future holds for the legal profession in terms of making Nigerian lawyers more competitive globally?
If we fail to produce a visionary and proactive leadership for the Nigerian Bar Association to make the MBA a catalyst to advancing the cause of the profession, then the future is bleak for everybody. But if we produce leadership with relevant capacity, capability, and experience, then, and of course, with the courage of conviction to take hard decisions, then the future of the profession is bright. Nothing works by itself. Things are made to work. The MBA has to be more proactive to defend the rule of law. It is the rule of law that gives confidence and assurances and trust to the people of any country to approach the lawyers. When works are not coming to the lawyers, income of the lawyers will cease. And when income is dwindling, when financial capacity is reducing, what they can pay will also reduce. You cannot give what you don't have. And talking about proactive of leadership, for example, there was a time I read on social media, get free legal advice. That was an advert by one of the banks in this country. Free legal advice. Who will render that advice? Is the business of the bank involved in rendering legal advice? To every legal advice that you render free is a minus to a legal advice that a law firm can offer and get paid for it. That is our skill. That is what we learned, and that is what we are practicing. So MBA must retrieve our job. The encroachment happens every day, and this is one of such classical encroachments. We must get our job back. The more of this encroachment we stop, the more work we get for our members. And the more work our members handle, the more income they generate, the more they are able to pay the juniors in their establishment. We have to live up to our expectations. Life does not give anybody what he wishes, but what he demands. MBA must demand their job back from all those that are encroaching on them. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Ajibade, your final comments, please. And please talk about what the future holds for the legal profession in terms of making Nigerian lawyers more competitive globally as you wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Shola. Well, my final comments are that the theme of today's session couldn't have been more apt. For me, anybody who is seeking to lead our association now must have the welfare of the legal professional as a centerpiece of whatever plans he or she, well, it's only he's at the moment, so I guess I don't need to add or she. Whatever plan he has for the association, I think we're all at one in saying that our association has not done sufficiently well in terms of welfare to date. We might have different ideas and different approaches to how to solve the problem, but I think it should be comforting to those who are listening to us that at least we recognize the fact that the welfare of the legal professional is a critical thing that we must look into. And that is definitely my priority if by God's grace I'm elected president. But in relation to your closing question, I think what the Nigerian legal professional needs to do in order to address global competitiveness is really to up our game. Because the truth is, you know, it's a competition out there. Nobody is going to give you anything for free. We need to improve our service levels. Our service levels are not as good as they ought to be. And these are areas in which the NBA also ought to provide guidance. You know, like I said to you, I think one of the most critical categories that the NBA must address are the people coming straight out of law school. And now that I have a better understanding, because I didn't have a proper understanding of Professor Momodu's question. Now that I have a better understanding of it, indeed, this is something that can be taught right from university through law school. If you don't wear service business, you know, nobody comes to a lawyer just because, you know, nobody wakes up and hopes to go and see a lawyer. You go to a lawyer because you need a service, and we must be able to deliver that service efficiently, humanely, having the interest of the client at heart. And that's what I was referring to when I said, you know, an employee in a law firm who says I'm entitled to close at 5 because my letter of employment says so, without giving consideration to the fact that there's an urgent client matter that needs to be filed the next day, really is not a lawyer. A lawyer must have the interest of the client as a centerpiece. And if we're going to be globally competitive, we need to understand that. Simple things like meeting timelines, simple things like you told your client that he would get the document tomorrow at 6. If the client doesn't get it at 6, then you must communicate the fact that there's a delay. But we mustn't treat our clients like doing them a favor. They're basic things, they're soft skills, and those soft skills are important if we're going to be globally competitive.
Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Thank you very much. Mr. Akpata, your final comments, please.
Yeah, so Shola, quickly, I must correct this impression that both Dr. Ajibade and Deacon Adesina seem to be passing along. I think it's a disservice to our lawyers if we begin to think that the majority of our lawyers who would want to see that they have a contract of employment, upon seeing that contract of employment in place, would insist that at 3 o'clock we need to go home or at 5 o'clock. All we are saying is that proper regulation of the profession is critical and that the terms of engagement must be spelled out. So if a man needs to work up until 11 or 12 midnight, you must factor that in and let him know that this is what the lay of the land looks like. We work up to this time here. Let the person sign up to that. That's what we're saying. I don't think it's fair to think that to say that anybody wants to go. Maybe there might be 1 or 2 such lawyers out there, but I'll be surprised that anybody will say I'm going home when the work is not done. If that person exists, well, that's unfortunate. But let us not skew this argument or slant this argument in that direction. We're talking regulation. Second, my final words, Shola, I've said to you before, let's lead by example. It is quite clear that the issues are known to all. We just need to take 2 steps back, properly make sure we recognize them, we clearly articulate them, we put a structure in place that will help us enforce whatever decisions or implement whatever decisions we arrive at. If we don't do that, we will continue to pay lip service to the issue of welfare, and that is unacceptable. That is not good enough. Now, I don't know, Shola, if you want me to chime into talk about the issue of globalization.
Yes,
and what the lawyer needs to do. Yes, so what the lawyer needs to do is to ensure, firstly, that he gets the knowledge. And by himself, he may not be able to do all of that. So what the association needs to do is that he's able to establish platforms where such a lawyer will be able to acquire knowledge and be able to compete. With the signing up of us Nigeria signing on to Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the borders are coming down. The borders are coming down. We need to be able to compete. The world is coming to us. This is not even about us going to the world. So it's important that we do that. Finally, Shola, let me quickly say, to set the record straight with Deacon Adesina, my big brother, the learned senior advocate, that it would not be fair to leave this conversation and conclude that the section of business law was established by the administration he served as general secretary. Now, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan, right? So let us put the record straight, let us say, you know that Chief OCJ Okocha SAN must take credit because it was his administration that recommended the establishment. Chief Olanikweku must take credit because it was his administration that proposed this to NEC. Chief Bayo Ojo must take credit because it was the administration that inaugurated the section. So we must give credit to all those to whom credit is due. It's important because there are young lawyers who are listening, who were not around then, who don't know that history. So I needed to set that record straight.
Thank you, Mr. Akpata.
The birth of SBL was the joint effort of our leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Deacon Adesina still here? Okay, I think this is a good place to stop this conversation. We want to apologize for all the hacking on behalf of Ellen. I apologize for all the hacking and the assault that we had on our poor ears. And thank you very much. Deacon Adesina.
Let me respond very briefly to the last
very quickly, please.
Just very, within 1 minute.
Please go ahead.
Kocha is a respected past president of the bar, who I know one-on-one and who knows me. The establishment of section of business law and legal practice was started by 2002 and we concluded it in 2004. The next meetings were held in 2003. It was approved by the annual general conference in Enugu in August 29 or 20, in August 2003. And then we established it in 2004. I have all the NEC minutes in my custody. So please let us ascribe credit to those that are due for it. The constitution of that committee was made by us, I nominated Judge Etomi, a very respected member of the bar, because Judge Etomi and I had discussion on the establishment of section of business practice when I was campaigning to be General Secretary of the bar. So please, let us take the record straight. Thank you very much. I will not say more than that.
Thank you,
those are not the facts as I know them, Shola.
Mr. Akpata, we have to go. We have to go. Well, I'm sure that
set the record straight. It is wrong.
You've made the point. You've made the point, and I'm sure that we can continue this conversation at some other time. We really
let us don't lie, my brother.
We've overshot our time, please. We need to wrap up. Thank you so much. I know that there'll be many more opportunities.
I will make copies and send to you.
Can we mute everyone, please? Thank you all for participating. I know that there are many more opportunities for sessions like this.
More opportunities.
Yes, we would. Hello, I know that I was saying that I'm sure that there'll be more opportunities and we'll explore this in further conversations, but we've overshot our time and we really have to go. Thank you so much. On behalf of Elan, I want to thank everyone. We welcome inquiries at Elan. Please, if you have any more questions, you can drop them on our chat platform. I work in TV, I could always get the participants to respond to some of these issues. So please, I want to apologize to those who we couldn't take their questions, but we really have to go. We've short our time. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Adesina, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you, Dr. Ajibade. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Akpata. Thank you, everyone. We wish you all the best with the campaign show. All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.